So this is our essay called Prison Reform, and we are working with three different sources. You can choose these sources from books, the books that we've been working on in class, or from the sources that I've posted as part of our prison reform outline, which would be located on our Padlet, just to remind you where that is. And we had out of class activities here in this column and prison reform outline number 1, 2, and 3. So those are a list of some linked sources. This video is going to focus on how we actually put together those sources. So if you are already at the point of having found your three sources, you can fast pace this to like another minute. And I'm going to get into integrating your sources with technical aspects of quotation integration. So let's first start with if you were not in class, there was a 10-minute writing in your response to this particular quote right here to get you to think about some subconscious ideas, some generative thinking about the quote, about the prison reform prompt. We're going to move on to this is the actual prompt. And again, like any prompt on the exam, you're going to have this paragraph right here that gives you a launch point, but you're not writing about this particular quote. So some students get confused because they think that they have to write based on the first paragraph of the prompt. And the actual task is here. Consider Mandela's words and write an essay in which you develop your own position on prison reform in America. So this phrase here, write an essay, that's exactly what you need to do. It doesn't look like an agree, disagree debate, but you have to find the argument within that prompt. Do you believe that prisons should be reformed? Would that be beneficial to society in our country? Or do you think they should not be reformed? And that is the pro or con. Pro is your position. So whatever your position is pro. That's an important distinction. So if your position was that prisons should not be reformed, that prison reform is not beneficial to America, that would be your pro, right? That's your side. The con would be the counterpoint to your position. It gets a little confusing, but I like thinking in terms of pro, your position, and then con is the counter. So just like the argument essay, you come up with your own T-chart, use this T-chart model here. You're coming up with three ways or three reasons to prove your position, and you're coming up with make sure those ways are idea based. So I am moving you away from feeling like you have to look at that universal idea list and really stressing about whether or not you found universal ideas. I want you to just come up with three reasons, and then we'll pull those, just double check to make sure that you have universal ideas within those reasons after. And then for each reason that supports your position, you're going to develop the con or the counterpoint to that reason. Okay, so we worked a lot on source alignment. So what does that mean? When I look at my T-chart, so say this is this is a prompt. The prompt has something to do with libraries. So this is not the prison reform. And I've developed what, I believe is the pro and which is the con. I'm coming up with my position, and then I have my sources A, B, C, D. I only need three, so I have to figure out where those three sources go. Do they support one of the three pros, one of the three reasons that's proving my position, or does it support one of the three cons? You don't necessarily need to have a source represent a con point. In other words, you can come up with your own con points, but if you wish, you can have one of your sources be a con to one of your points. So here is a way that a team in our class has organized their essay. They're thinking about doing it this way, and I love this organizational strategy where you take your 3 universal idea based paragraphs, right? So the first body paragraph, they're going to deal with racial injustice. The second one, they're talking about the social impact of prison reform and why that's a benefit to society. And then the third, something to do with manipulation. And I don't know well enough, but they're developing an idea on manipulation, and they have their gold source they named A, green source B, pink source C. So you arbitrarily just decide, okay, A should be, this is my book, this is A, I'm going to do this book. C, I'm going to do this book. No, this book, if this is A, I'm going to do this in gold, this in green, this in pink. You just decide. You don't have to have books. You can definitely have the internet sources as well. Once you've assigned A, B, or C to your 3 sources and assigned a color, you can visually see, okay, racial injustice is going to have B and A, and then social impact is going to have A and C. So what I want you to try to do is in your first 2 paragraphs to have 3 different sources. I want to push you to do this, and I'll explain why later. You do need to map out 3 body paragraphs. If you're a writing team of 3, you will write 3 body paragraphs. Each person gets a paragraph. And each paragraph needs to have 2 different sources. That's why you see 2 different colors underneath each of these stickies. If you're a writing team of 2, you write fully 2 body paragraphs, right? One person writes one, second person writes another, and then you're just mapping out the third. So this writing team I know is 2 people. Then for the third, what they're going to do is write their topic sentence out fully about manipulation, and then assign 2 quotes or 2 pieces of evidence from 2 different sources to fit with that topic sentence. So that's how the writing for this goes. Why is it important to have 3 different colors in the first 2 paragraphs? Because on the exam, if you only have time to write 2 paragraphs, you still need to fit 3 different sources into that essay to get credit, to get full credit, to get the highest points possible. So let's say you run out of time, you've listed your 3 universal ideas in your thesis, right? You have this great thesis, you've done racial injustice, you've done social impact, but you don't have time to get to the third. Okay, but you've got to make sure that you've included 3 different sources in the first 2 paragraphs. So when we practice, I want you to think about that. So here's another way to look at it. So do I have 3 colors in my first 2? Yes. Do I have a different source in each, among the 2 in each body paragraph? Yes. So like this way is not good because I have 2 source A's in the first paragraph, and I need to combine with 2 different sources in each paragraph. So here we get into what does this look like in an actual body paragraph? And I'm going to try to enlarge my screen while I'm showing you. Okay, so I know this is hard to read. We do write the AP language essays in the exam handwritten. So eventually we're going to start moving to handwriting. You see that this writer is starting to integrate right here, and I didn't underline it, but this first sentence, English is spoken in these countries, Cohen notes, right? So Cohen would be the author, right, of this article. The cultural benefits can only be gained by those who understand the native tongue. So source F is in parentheses. So this person is paraphrasing what this writer Cohen in source F is saying. How do I know it's a paraphrase? There's no quotation marks. I'm assuming that this writer is paraphrasing. There should be a period after the source F, because, and that's a mistake that this writer made, but after the parentheses citation comes a period. You always have to cite in parentheses the source, even if you are paraphrasing. Again, this is a paraphrase, but if you don't have a citation in parentheses, you're not going to get credit. Your score is going to go down. You don't have to put the authors in. This person did because they want to make it clearer, but I wouldn't stress about that. The sources will already be lettered, and all you have to do is take the letter in the parenthetical citation. You don't need the title. You don't need the author. Now, here we have, while journalist David Thomas believes that English-only speakers are just, I can't read this, a logical fallacy exposes a counter-argument towards why multilingualism is so beneficial. So here we're introducing a counterpoint. How do I know that they're introducing a counterpoint with a different source? There's the while, and there's this other author. And they are giving background on the other author's point of view by paraphrasing it right here. So the first part of this counter, again, begins with while source, whatever source they're dealing with, in David Thomas, right? So Thomas notes that there are, and then they're paraphrasing up until the quotes. The quotes start right here. So Thomas notes that there are 6,900 living languages in the world, and there's the quote, Europe alone has 234 spoken on a daily basis, end quote. So you kind of have to get used to how the many ways that this can go. And it's going to take time to practice quotation integration. This is our first step in it. So it should feel confusing. It should feel awkward. It might be a little overwhelming or frustrating because it's new and it's a technical skill. So there's part of writing, right, that is the ideas and how you organize your ideas. And there's the technical aspect where if you take quoted text and if you're citing sources, which we are in this essay, very important, we need to cite use three sources, then you need to deal with it in a technical way. And that's why this might be new and just a lot to take in. And there are many different ways to do this. It's not like, science where there's like one thing that can happen when you do an experiment, right? There's a lot of different ways that you can put words together, and there's a lot of different ways that you can choose to integrate quotations. And I'm going to go over a few. I think taking a picture of this or going back to this slide just to kind of analyze what this writer was doing. It's not perfect, but this is an actual AP language synthesis essay produced in an exam setting. And the writer is using source F right here. It appears as a counter. Now that I'm reading it, it's unclear. This was source F up here. I'm not quite sure if this is still source F. So if I was grading this, I'd want to know, like, where does this quote come from? Is it source F? Is it source B? Is it another source? But the point is they're using a source as a counterpoint. Again, you don't have to, but one of your three sources can be used as a counter. This is true, but that doesn't mean we don't learn any of them, even if you'd only be able to, quote, speak a minority of fellow Europe in their native tongue, quote, end quote, right? That minority's insight into their culture is priceless. So there is the rebuttal, right, in blue. There is the leveraging their own or enhancing their own. And then this comes from another source. So they're using another source to rebut and enhance their own argument. And it's in parentheses. All right. That was important to note. We're going to go over how to actually integrate quotations And if you can get out these documents right here while I am also getting ready, you have the notebook handouts column, which is where you want to be hanging out. And you want to click on introductory words for quotations. That looks like this. And then you want to go back into the Padlet and click on the other entry here in this notebook handout column, which is quotation integration. And quotation integration is where we're going to be for the next couple of minutes. So I want you to actually go into the Padlet, take out these resources. Writing is about pulling all these different materials together, your evidence, but then the resources. Like, we don't want to forget about what can help us. When I write something new, I have to understand how it needs to be written and follow those guidelines. Again, this is the technical aspect, but this right here is something you can take with you to college. This exact handout, the resources on this exact Padlet is what you'll need when you're ready to write your essays in college as a freshman and sophomore and junior. So you have two main options on quoting your evidence. I already went over that. You have either, do I want to use the words of the text and quotation marks around it, or do I want to paraphrase? You have to know that on the synthesis essay, they're not looking to see, they don't want to see a lot of lines of your essay as quoted text. They only want to see bits and pieces, like you have to go in like a dentist and extract or pull out just those little nuggets of quoted text. You might even want to just do 2 words spiced in like pepper in a cooking, right? You just want to maybe put one there and then put another 2 words here. And you decide how you want to break up that quoted text, but no more than 10 words. And you might be thinking, what? But students, we rely too much on the actual quote, the actual text. We need to add our own context. And so it puts the pressure on you, or the responsibility rather on you, to come up with the context, which is the who and the what and the background of the quote. So it gives you more opportunity to write about this quote. So you want to think about, I was helping someone the other day, they had this much of the paragraph that looked awesome to quote. And I said, well, what is going to have the biggest impact on your reader to move them to your point? So always go back to what it's like in a debate. Which exact material are you going to take and speak out loud to create pathos or emotional appeal? Or do you want to go logos, like doing the logic and the data? So I think choosing which words work to move or persuade your reader is really important. And then the rest of what you want to get across, you can either paraphrase or give that context to. So you can embed your own writing within your sentence, like this one in red. So let's take a look at this one in red that is now highlighted in blue. Even if you were only able to speak to a minority of non-English speakers, and that's all, that minority is priceless in building a diverse multilingual society. So what's great about this is that it seamlessly integrates. So if I can just get out of that. Okay. So you have this kind of like an if-then construction, and you take a piece of the text and then you amp it up. Like, this is priceless in building, this culture that we want. So if, obviously this person's pro was a diverse multilingual society. But they're deciding to grab the part of the article or the text that is going to work for them. And you might decide to grab a different part of that article or text. So I do want to go over 2 ways to use punctuation when you're quoting. One is that you have your setup for the quote, and you're telling us what is happening, what's the context. And you are also, it's not, and this is where we get tricky. We're not analyzing the source like we are analyzing literature, fences, or Antigone. We're not. We are going in and we're taking out the part of the source that is going to help our argument. So I don't want, this is where students kind of cross the line and get away from an argument essay, and they start writing like a literary or analysis of these sources. So you're not analyzing them, you're using them to promote your opinion or your position. So you can tell by the language that is used. Remember that the word charge, the positive or negative charges, the adjectives, the adverbs, you are using them to promote your position, which also helps your line of reasoning. So economists lay the blame for financial loss on bad government policy. So that's specifically charged language, laying the blame, blaming the government, and you're setting up this quote to show your point of view. And the way that you do this technically is with a colon. You have this complete sentence. Really, this is a standalone sentence. You put a colon, and then you put the actual quote, and then you put the parentheses with source A, and then you put the period. And you might want to take a picture of this, because this is like the math problem here with the technical punctuation. Another way to do it where, this might be a little bit confusing, but another way to do it if you didn't do the parentheses would just to say according to source A. But let's focus on parentheses and really citing parenthetically our source letters. So here's the paraphrase of the same quote. And I just say, if you're going to paraphrase, you really need to be conscious of not plagiarizing. You can't just copy it. They're going to know that it's plagiarized. So if you're ever not sure what to do, I would go with a quote. What is the benefit of paraphrasing? It might be faster for some writers. Some of you, it might, if you're stressed about like how to integrate a quote, or you can't remember language to transition to a quote, or you can't remember, and you freeze, and just go in and paraphrase, put it in your own words. And then anything that you are taking, any idea you got from a source, or any piece of evidence that you found in a source, you would just put the source A. But I think you can compare the two, right up here, and how that was the quote that they're looking at, and then here's what they wrote as a paraphrase of that quote. You still have laying the blame on bad government policy, but the writer then adds, their reasoning why, resulting in subsidies for farmers that drive down the prices beyond what the prices should be. So they kind of get the same idea from here. So I like this. I think here are some, this is really with the introductory words or phrases. So thinking about how these are charged, like what does it reflect your point of view? Does it reflect the counter point of view? So you can experiment with some of these words here. All right, let's go back into moving on. This is just a reminder that you're really just getting in to grab information, and you might want to tell your brain, okay, one quote or one piece of evidence could be a definition on the topic that you want to quote. Maybe that's what you want to use. You could be looking for a difference to your position or the counter argument, or you might be looking for a comparison evidence to help your position. You're looking for like pro your position. You can also take a look at data. There will always be a source in the exam that you can choose from that looks something like this or is a graph. So definitely you can use that as a whole source. Reminder that the thesis still is the same as this lovely picture, and you should have this picture on your phone and memorize it. It is still beginning with a counter argument. It has this construction, in fact, that should be like that, right? and then it has a because your claim. Prisons should be reformed. Prisons are beneficial to society, or prisons are not beneficial. The reform is not beneficial to society because, or in order to, and then the three universal idea phrases that reflect your three topic sentences. And I think that, as long as you're thinking about, you have these source options and you're pulling three together, and that each paragraph needs two. And what's really important too is how to use transitional phrases to join those two sources. So if you're using two sources that build a comparison, you obviously want to have some transitional phrases in there that show similarities between the two sources somewhere in your reasoning. I know this is a long video. I just want to make sure that we're all good to go in case you're out or you're absent or you have questions. Always go back to the Padlet home base. You'll notice that our prison reform writing space is here. Most of you have started here with the prison reform brainstorming space, which is where you list your main ideas and your source alignment. All the stuff you can ignore if you've been in class, and it's been at the front of this video, the beginning of this video. Here's some great resources that you can use. The prompt is here, thesis structure here, and then we have your first topic sentence. So you're going to drop down, like if I was in that writing group, I would say prison reform is beneficial to society in the both in the short term and long term, or as it creates generational change, or something like that. So you want to have a so what. I mean, they could have just said prison reform is beneficial to society. But if you extend your sentence and you add just a little bit more to that, another idea, an impact, what's the impact of your main statement? And so you can do it with like an as phrase, like I did. You could do in order to. A lot of people are doing which, which creates, which, impacts, or they're doing creating, impacting. So that's what I mean here with the creating, forcing, enabling, prompting. So I actually tell you to use a ing verb. So it's something that this writing team might want to say. Prison reform is beneficial to society, prompting communities to enact fair and equal. I'm making stuff as I'm going along. Okay, I had to pause to actually create a sentence I could use. So prison reform is beneficial to society, ing verb, right? You're choosing either one of these or coming up with your own. Helping communities create better opportunities for formerly incarcerated people. Great. So that whole paragraph is going to point to how prison reform is beneficial to society because communities are now able to form better opportunities and to help people rehabilitate back into society for formerly incarcerated people. So you want to jump into your evidence. Again, all of this stuff so I mean, don't freak out by everything I wrote, but I did want to write it here. There's the quotation guidelines again. Here's how you quote the sources. Please use the argument starter language here. Continue to use that so that you're processing it and it's becoming a part of your writing. But, really don't feel like you have to have all this flowery language. It's you want to state your reasoning as if you were in a debate. And you're going to find a comparison between the two sources with a simple transition word that shows likeness, or you're going to use one of your sources as a counterpoint source. And then you somewhere need the counter argument. So somehow, somewhere, if you don't want it to be a counter source, then at least come up with a counter argument in your own logic, in your own thinking, and then have a rebuttal. Some people like having that other source as a counter source. And then you're just going to repeat. So a lot of this is the instructions, right? Just in case you're lost, you don't have to look word for word here, but this is just your guide. I hope this is helpful. I can't wait to hear your ideas and to read how you're putting them all together. Please reach out if you have any questions. I'm very excited. Thank you for sticking with this exceptionally long video.